Bay say. Some voices never learn to rest. I, Elias Blackthorn, have heard the screams of dying men, the prayers of widows, and even the whisper of the desert itself. But nothing chilled me as much as the sound that echoed in that old red hollow schoolhouse child's laughter, coming from beneath the floorboards. The letter arrived on a sunless morning, bearing the faded City Hall seal. Nocturnal disturbances at the old elementary school, it read. Disturbances, that's what they call it when hell decides to play innocent. I grabbed my hat, the star already weighing heavily on my chest, and went. The wind blew dust and memories. The school building seemed alive, windows like eyes, doors like mouths waiting to swallow anyone who dared enter. The creak of the boards greeted me like a greeting. The smell of mildew and rust was the same as I'd once smelled in a freshly dug grave. And then came the soundlight, high-pitched, almost joyful, a child's laughter. But Red Hollow had long since lost its children, none alive. At least I walked slowly, each step seeming to awaken something dormant. The walls still bore chalk drawings, crooked portraits of dead teachers, and a small, broken chalkboard where someone had written a single sentence years ago. He's still here. That's when the laughter repeated itself, closer, coming from the ground, just below my feet. I felt the air chill, and the echo spread like a secret being told. The laughter turned to tears, then silence. And in the midst of that silence, I heard something no sane man would want to hear. Small hands pounding on the wood, trying to get out. I knelt down, touched the cold floor. Then something on the other side touched back. But what really made me stay was what came next to thin. Sweet, impossible voice whispering my name. Elias. The voice knew who I was. And that night, for the first time in years, I realized that maybe Red Hollow's past hadn't stayed buried. Stay with me. Because what I found under that floorboard was no ordinary ghost. The old school hallway seemed to lengthen with every step. The walls, covered in mold and memories, still reeked of the bittersweet smell of chalk and old smoke. Every door I opened creaked like a stifled scream, as if the building itself wanted to keep me from remembering what had happened there. The floor gave way beneath my boots, and the wind that filtered through the cracks sounded like a child's breathing. I entered the old main room. The chalkboard still stood, covered in a thick layer of dust, as if time had tried to hide something it didn't want to see. I placed my hand on the board and wiped away some of the surface. Dust rose into the air, and that was when the cold cut through my spine. Before my eyes, words appeared, writing themselves, letter by letter, with fragile strokes, like invisible fingers scratching away time. You're back, Elias. I stood still. The name echoed in my mind with the weight of a sentence. No one had called me that since I first left Red Hollow, but that voice or whatever had written, it knew who I was. And more than that, it remembered. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was alive. He could hear the faint creak of wood, the creak of desks, as if something small were moving between them. I passed the flashlight over the floor and I swear on everything I have left, Ty saw children's handprints in the dust, small, scattered, as if children had been playing there just moments before. The wind blew again, knocking over a pile of burned books in the corner. Among the ashes, a still legible page caught my eye. It was the attendance register for the school's last class. The name at the bottom made me swallow hard. Thomas Boone Tommy. The boy we never found after the fire. I remember that night well. The flames engulfing the roof. The screams mixed with prayers. They said it was an accident, but I saw Professor Clara's look before she died. It wasn't fear of the fire. It was guilt. She tried to tell me something, but the smoke drowned out her word. And since then, Tommy's body has never been recovered. Years later, there I was before the same painting, the same dust, hearing the same laughter I once declared impossible. The sound came again, clearer, coming from the floorboards, light shuffling footsteps, circling beneath the floor. In the laughter breathe, muffled, but so close I could feel the air vibrate. And then, as if mocking me, a ball of cloth rolled to my feet. Old, charred, but still intact. A toy. The same one that was in the report. The same one found in Tommy Boone's backpack. I picked up the toy, and laughter echoed again, this time around me. It wasn't coming from the floor anymore. It was coming from the walls, but the ceiling, from within the wood. That's when I realized the school wasn't empty. It was just waiting for me to come back. And when I found Teacher Clara Boone's diary, I discovered that the boy never played alone. The teacher's office was at the end of the hallway, where the ceiling had sunk in and time seemed to slow. The air there was different, dense, as if every speck of dust held a secret. I pushed against the door with my shoulder. It gave way with a long creak, like a groan coming from deep within the wood. The charred curtains still hung, and on the soot-covered table lay a small red-covered notebook. Pi recognized the symbol sewn into the spine. It belonged to the teacher, Clara Boone. I had collected her belongings myself on the day of the fire, but the diary was not there that night. I sat at the desk. Each page I turned released the fragile sound of dry paper. The first notes were simple. Notes, lists, student names. But as I progressed, the words changed. The handwriting became shaky, hurried. Tommy laughs when no one speaks. He looks at the floor and says there's someone there. A friend who calls him when school is over. Other children started laughing too, as if the ground was telling jokes only they understand. I kept reading, and a chill crept up my spine. Clara described nights when she would wake to the sound of light footsteps beneath the school walls, laughter coming from the sealed basements. She said Tommy would talk to the living wood, said she was asking for blood to stay standing. He says the ground is hungry. The last few pages were stained with something dark, maybe ink, maybe not. If something happens to me, tell Elias it wasn't an accident. The fire didn't start in the living room. It came from below. I closed the diary slowly. The leather creaked. and the wind blew through the broken window, scattering dust around. For the first time in a long time, I felt fear not of what I saw, but of what I remember. Because on the night of the fire, I'd also heard that laughter. I just didn't want to believe it. I looked at the living room floor. The floor was dark with stains, older than the fire. Round, deep marks, like the prints left by small, burned hands. I felt the air vibrate a distant sound, almost like a child's song, echoing between the walls. It was soft, but it carried something no adult should ever hear. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. There was no doubt. The laughing boy was still there. Père now. He wasn't laughing alone anymore. I returned to the main classroom, determined to understand what Professor Clara had been trying to hide. The laughter had stopped, but the air felt heavier, as if the school itself were holding its breath. I shone the flashlight on the floor and noticed something strange. One of the floorboards creaked differently from the others, a hollow sound, almost like a calling. I knelt and pried the wood apart with the tip of my knife. The floorboards parted easily, revealing a dark opening deep enough to swallow a child. The smell that rose from it wasn't just earth, it was old flesh, iron, and memories. Pale gleams reflected the flashlight's light, bits of burned toys, small, crooked crosses, mass, and something I didn't immediately want to recognize. Bones. I touched the ground with my gloves and felt something cold and damp. It was a child's chain with a star-shaped pendant. I recognized the name engraved in the metal, corroded by time. Tommy. Before I could react, I heard the sound, that same soft laughter, coming from deep within the hole. And with it, the sound of fingers scratching against the wood. I took a step back. The laughter changed, became hoarse, distorted, almost human. And then I felt its more cold hands, grabbing my wrist and trying to pull me inside. I pulled hard, but the wood vibrated as if breathing. The shadows around the crack moved on their own, forming something that looked like a smiling face. You left me here, Sheriff, the voice whispered. I dropped the flashlight, which fell into the hole and went out. The room was plunged into darkness, bent for the first time in years. I wished I'd never returned to Red Hollow. The air inside the school grew thick, almost solid. The cold seemed to rise from the ground, and each breath I took was accompanied by a whisper that wasn't my own. The wood beneath my feet pulsed as if it had a heart, and the echo of Tommy's laughter echoed off every wall, sometimes high-pitched and childish, sometimes hoarse and full of resentment. I tried to leave, but the door slammed shut. The latch turned on its own. The windows began to vibrate, and the hallway bells rang, one by one, without wind, without hands. The entire school groaned, alive, breathing. I knew what was happening. This wasn't just a spirit. It was something fueled by hatred, loneliness, and abandonment feelings that grow like weeds in cursed soil. The laughter turned to tears, then a scream. By sound that pierced my chest and made my bones vibrate. I tried to remain sane, but the air smelled of smoke and ash. like the night of the fire. And then I saw it. Shadows of children running across the walls. Eyeless, faceless, just mouths open in laughter. Why didn't you bury us, Sheriff? The voice murmured. My hands shook. Memories came flooding back. That night I had left the scene before dawn. There were too many bodies, and they said one less boy wouldn't change the report. I accepted. I sighed. I failed. The school seemed to sense my guilt. The ground cracked, releasing a reddish glow, like ancient embers. Laughter mingled with moans, prayers, and screams that came from beneath the earth. Each sound spoke the same name. Tommy, I yelled back, not in fear, but in regret. I should have come back for you, boy. For a moment, the laughter ceased. The silence was absolute. And then, from the depths of the darkness, a small voice answered. But now, you're never leaving. The school burned with sounds that didn't belong in this world. The boards rattled on their own. The bells echoed like distorted prayers. I knew I couldn't leave without releasing it all. It would never let me go. I opened Professor Clara Boone's diary and threw it onto the cracked floor. I ripped open the palm of my hand and, with hot blood, drew on the ground the symbol I'd always carried on my chest, the sheriff's star. The wind blew hard, fanning the flames of the ancient candles. The flames licked at the diary, and the pages began to writhe as if screaming. The smoke took shape before me, a small, frail figure, smiling like a boy finally understanding a lesson. You can rest now. Tommy, I murmured. He looked at me one last time, and without saying anything, he stepped into the fire. The laughter stopped. The windows stopped shaking. Pie. And for the first time since I arrived, the silence felt pure. When the sun rose, the school was nothing but ash and dust. I stood there, watching the wind carry away what was left of the memories. I touched the star pinned to my chest and noticed something new etched on its charred surface. Thank you, Elias. I closed my eyes wearily and walked back through the ruins of Red Hollow. But that night, as the wind blew through the empty city streets, I swear I heard it again, a light, innocent laugh, blowing from under the earth. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't laughing at me, but with me. Sometimes I think certain souls don't want to be saved. Just remember. And Reed Hollow is a place that never forgets. The wind still carries laughter. The ground still whispers names. And the star in my chest weighs heavier each night. If you've heard that sound too, don't go near the old school. Just pray. Now tell me, would you dare to enter that building after everything I've told you? Leave your comment. I want to know how far your courage goes. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel Sheriff of Nowhere. And follow me along these roads where the sun no longer shines. The next Red Hollow case is already on the screen. If you dare, click and discover what the desert buried this time.